everybody. Welcome into Before the Hedges, presented by Kroger. I'm Hannah Chalker, alongside UGA recruiting expert Jeff Sintel. Hope everyone's having a good Monday evening. And I don't know if you've noticed, but Jeff is looking a little tanned today. It's because he just got back from the Sunshine State, visiting with some recruits at IMG Academy. How was your trip, Jeff?
Well, first of all, it was a good trip. Met a lot of, talked to a lot of recruits, but I get a little envious of the current generation for one thing. While I was hanging out and talking to Derek Rambo Hunter, I was watching his practices, and Hannah, there's something now called a tackle wheel and a tackle ball.
Okay.
It's literally a wheel you roll along the practice field, and you get to hook it and tackle it. So it works on the technique of being able to track, locate, and destroy moving objects. But I don't remember any tackle wheels growing up for me, or any tackle balls, which is another ball on the tether that you punch, and you've got to tackle it going along. Think about a bowling ball that is now like King Kong sized. So much fun, these kids today. They got it better with tackle wheels and tackle balls.
We're going to get into a lot more of the tackle wheels and tackle balls later in the show, and his meet and greet with some of the recruits from IMG Academy. So we're going to do that. And we have so much more coming up for you today. We are going to give you all of the latest news around Athens, including the name Owen Pappoe just will not leave us alone. The saga continues with Owen Pappoe. That's coming up right off the top of the show. We also have a scavenger hunt. UGA hosted some unofficial visiting recruits, and Jeff's going to give us the lowdown on what the scavenger hunt was all about, and we're going to break it down by key positions today. We are going to do defensive line and running back, and then in the next show we're going to do linebackers and DBs. So we are going to look all into the scavenger hunt. Really cool stuff. Excited about that. We will also be taking questions and comments, and at the end of the show we have a little update for you, our very popular Prom Dog segment from last Monday. We have an update, right, Jeff?
That was a big winner. We got some more contributions. Everybody wanted to know more about show dogs and prom dogs. Stay tuned for that, because that's coming up on Before the Hedges.
Okay, well, we are going to get on to the latest news right off the top of the show, and like I mentioned, Owen Pappoe. So what happened was Keith Niebuhr of 247sports.com tweeted an article about how Auburn's going to have the top 5 recruiting class in 2019. Well, not according to Nolan Smith. He put out a tweet in response to Keith Niebuhr, and he says, is this going to be after or before Owen Pappoe flips to UGA? Jeff, what did you think of this?
Very nice job on the last name pronunciation, by the way. You nailed it like the Ukrainian gymnast. We're giving you all 9.9s on that one. I just think that's Nolan being Nolan. Nolan's a playful guy. He's very charismatic. You look at what Nolan tries to do there, and I actually spoke to Nolan about what he thinks is going to happen with Owen Pappoe, and he calls it a toss-up right now about what's going to happen with Owen Pappoe. But like you said in the show open, Hannah, this is kind of like, I don't know, who remembers the days of BMG Music Service and those things that would never leave my generation alone, about 12 CDs for the price of one. Jeff, what's a CD anymore or whatever? But this Owen Pappoe story is just not going to go away, but long way to go on that one. And most fans I talk to and interact with on social media are kind of like, Jeff, check with me in December.
More news around Athens. Nation's #2 inside linebacker Brandon Smith made his announcement today. It was between Penn State and Ohio State. He ended up choosing Penn State. That's where he's going to take his talents. But this is relevant because he had made some visits to UGA in the past. What happened after Brandon Smith's visits to Georgia?
Well, I think right now, Hannah, lots of people are kind of trying to look at it, and they're trying to go like, okay, Georgia is supposed to get these prospects from the Northeast now, and that's really not the case, no matter how many Isaiah Wilson stories or Brian Brzee stories, or even that's an uncommitted target, but a guy that's really looking at Georgia hard. But DeAndre Swift, Mark Webb Jr., the Bulldogs are supposed to expected to contend for these Northeast recruits, and I think they were with Brandon Smith for a time. I bet if he ever published his Final Four, Final Five, I think Georgia was probably in there, because he did take 2 significant visits to Georgia last year. And whenever an out-of-state prospect makes unofficial visits to a school during the season, that always garners some consideration. But I think the main thing we're touching on Brandon Smith today is because that's another inside linebacker target for Georgia that they had offered that they really liked. Brandon Smith is a 5-star, 6'4.5", about 229. Going to look really good paired up next to Micah Parsons in the Penn State defensive box for the Nittany Lions in the near future. But he chose Penn State today, and that's another name that Georgia might have gotten in the class of 2019 that the Bulldog fans and DawgNation can kind of look elsewhere about now.
We also have a very quick men's basketball recruiting update for you. Tom Crean has hired his third assistant. That's Amir Abdur-Rahim. Pulled him straight from Texas A&M. So he will join Chad Dollar and Joe Scott as assistants for the UGA men's basketball team. He was an assistant at Texas A&M from 2014 to 2018. And the past season, the Aggies made it to the Sweet 16 before falling to Michigan. So he's supposed to be a really good recruiter, right, Jeff?
Yeah, he's a product of the Atlanta area. His brother is Sharif Abdur-Rahim. Everybody knows that guy. He played in the NBA for some time, was the director of personnel for the Sacramento Kings. And Abdur-Rahim is a guy that's just going to have great connections because he played at Wheeler, going to have great connections in the Atlanta area. And that's what that move's all about. Georgia was not able to land Jonas Hayes. He's at Xavier now. Recently pulled in the commitment of Elias King, which was a major Georgia target when he was on staff. And the Abdur-Rahim move here is all about recruiting, and it's all about Tom Crean getting another more visible Georgia face with Metro Atlanta ties.
Okay, and we have one last rapid fire update for you before we get to the meat of our show and the activities from this past weekend in UGA, and that is the updated 2019 offers list. And we will start with offense, Jeff.
Offense, look at that number for quarterback. They keep growing. Two more. One of those was another dual threat out of the state of Louisiana. The boot state there doesn't have an offer from LSU, so that's something to watch there. You look at running back right there, you got Georgia adding another running back. Georgia had a target that recently committed to Oregon, an all-purpose back. Was never really in consideration for there. We're going to get into running backs later in our show. Wide receiver and tight end mostly stays stagnant. Georgia offered another offensive tackle recently, and offensive guard and center. Georgia has several of those offers out as well. Athlete, we've had some maybe reduction in the offer count at athlete simply because those guys have been transferred to other positions now for Georgia as well. Defensive side of the ball, that's still where the bulk of Georgia's offers come from. Offered a couple more defensive ends, offered an additional cornerback and an additional safety. The one punter-kicker combo they've offered is Will Reichard out of Hoover, Alabama. He is likely to make his decision very soon this week, and all indications seem to feel right there that he will choose the home state Crimson Tide.
Awesome. We will continue to update that list each and every week, so make sure to join us every Monday right here on Before the Hedges. It is presented by Kroger, and if you didn't know, you need to let the celebration begin with custom party platters from Kroger. Y'all, you can order these from Kroger.com or see a deli associate for details. Orders must be placed 24 hours in advance, so start planning today for your graduation celebrations or a party platter for any celebration at all. It doesn't have to be a graduation celebration, so go to Kroger.com for that. That's Jeff Sintel. I'm Hannah Chalker. You are watching Before the Hedges right here on DawgNation. And I've got one quick comment before we move on. I'm going to start pinning some comments at the top that I want to get to because it's kind of hard to keep up with it all. They go so fast. So Mark Godfrey asks, hey Jeff, what's up with D'Angelo Gibbs?
Well, Cobra Smart made some comments today and before the Columbus Bulldog Club meeting about D'Angelo Gibbs. And basically, I'm going to summarize. Not over yet, not at this juncture. Sit steady in the boat, DawgNation, and wait and see what the next maybe 100 days looks like for D'Angelo Gibbs in Georgia. I'm sure most of the fan base is hoping and wishing and wanting everything to work out great with D'Angelo. Still got to, just because he's enrolled in classes does not mean that he is fully fledged and fully involved as a member of the Georgia team right now. Wait and see, watch that situation closely, and I'm sure D'Angelo Gibbs is, everybody's hoping Georgia can add another talented 4-star, 5-star nation's elite player back to their secondary so D'Angelo can come back into the fold there as well.
Okay, we will get to more of your questions and comments later in the show, so make sure to keep those rolling in. All right, UGA hosted a scavenger hunt this past weekend for unofficial recruiting visitors. Jeff, what is this?
Scavenger hunt's pretty cool. You gotta have a shtick these days. Some people have like Big Cat Weekend. If you start looking at these photos and events from right there, what you have there is like basically the recruits were giving some tasks on an unofficial visit, a scavenger hunt. One of those everybody saw on social media was to get a selfie with Coach Smart. There's Andrew Booth right there. The previous clip was definitely Zacchaeus Pickens. You've got CJ Clark there. So what it was is a way, low stress recruiting weekend. You got Jermaine Johnson right there and Nolan Smith. Low stress recruiting weekend to hang out. Nobody's getting weighed. Nobody's getting measured. Nobody's really hard sell to commit. It's just have fun. Lots of activities which are basically designed to take the recruits across campus and give them a very fun kind of survey and a discovery expedition around the UGA campus.
So who all made it this weekend to the scavenger hunt?
Lots of guys. You got Andrew Booth, you got Zacchaeus Pickens, you got CJ Clark, you got Jaden Hazelwood, Nolan Smith, you got Rian Davis, you got Nakobe Dean, Tyreek Stevenson, Jamie Robinson, lots of guys. I think my number, I had it was around, we can't forget John Emery Jr. My number was around 12, 13 guys that actually made it and participated in the scavenger hunt. Lots of guys participated. I thought it was really interesting how Nakobe Dean's team, he of the 4.7 grade point average, finished second in the scavenger hunt, everything like that. And, you know, lots of cool things to do. You saw some pictures on social media where Jaden Hazelwood found a display that had some old Georgia jerseys. I'm talking about 1900 era Georgia jerseys, leather helmets and the like. And what they did there is when they got all the pieces together, it formed a puzzle, which was basically a really cool poster, as you see right there with the Georgia way. Of what Georgia, you know, a really cool poster of that unofficial big-time target. Lots of big names, 3 or 4 5-stars were there as well. And I'm going to tell you the over and under on how many times Nolan Smith might have said the term, "This is the place" or "This is the spot." You definitely want to choose the under when Nolan Smith, the over when Nolan Smith is involved on the recruiting trail.
Tom Lavelle asks, is that Andrew Booth's family with him? Yes, right, the family's got to come, and extended family. And
huge. It was like, this is really important because Andrew Booth is a recruit that really has, his family needs to be recruited as well, especially his twin sister. Lots of other schools have reached out to her and kind of given her a lot of goodwill, and this was a chance for Georgia to do that. And I want everybody to remember, it kind of got viral on social media. You saw that picture there of Andrew Booth and his family and the selfie. In that corner, I mean, the corner there, the shot of Mel Tucker is just priceless. Looks like it was cut out of a cardboard. He had one of those stone cold look faces that everybody kind of got attention on and really enjoyed on social media. But families were heavily involved here, and really it's a chance for Georgia to kind of project its staff and its personnel and its future and its promise. Look at that! Look at there. You got Mel Tucker in the corner of that picture right there. That's kind of his Jet magazine pose out of Boomerang, or like, all right, selfie time or whatever. Everybody got a big kick out of that one.
Hey, we need to get a selfie with Kirby Smart and post it on social media.
You'd have a picture like that in the corner, like that.
So stoic. Okay, so we're going to break this down like a puzzle. We're going to dive deep into the scavenger hunt. Who was there? Who wasn't there? And we're going to break it down like a puzzle. Right now, we're going to start with running backs, and 4-star John Emery from Louisiana was at the scavenger hunt. What do DawgNation fans need to know about John Emery?
So John Emery, it was pretty interesting. He had his spring game last week, and he was coming off a little tweak. And what happened there, Hannah, is he had like coaches galore. I mean, Georgia had 2 coaches there. LSU had 2 coaches there. Auburn had coaches there. Florida had coaches there. Southern Cal had coaches there. Everybody was there to see John Emery, nation's number 5 running back out of Louisiana. He's told our SEC country colleague Sam Spiegelman that he plans to make his decision tentatively in June. So he might be about a month away. He might be getting down the home stretch of his commitment. I've been told that Georgia wants to they could take up to 2 backs. And that would include John Emery would be one of those 2 backs, and it would be 2 backs that are among the nation's top 5 backs. And John Emery's a guy, big-time size, nation's number 5 overall running back prospect on the 24/7 Sports Composite. He ranks as number 68 overall. Check out that film. He definitely likes to break tackles and get those dog yards, those extra effort yards that Del McGee prefers out of his elite recruits.
So we teased it at the top of the show. You went down to Florida this past weekend, met with some IMG Academy recruits. One of those being 5-star running back Trey Sanders. The former Alabama commit is the nation's number 1 running back. What was your takeaway with your meeting with him?
Well, Trey was kind of very honest. He talked about, everybody's wondering about how much his brother is going to impact. You know, Umstead Sanders, his older brother, junior college 3-star. He was a guy that recently accepted an offer to do a preferred walk-on at Florida. And Trey kind of told me basically, man, he's got to do what's best for himself. What's going to be best for Trey Sanders might not actually be the best thing for his older brother, and likewise. And you know, he basically talked about a lot of things about his decision. He's told DawgNation in the past that his decision, if we're looking at it like a football game, he's in the 3rd quarter of his decision right there. And Trey named a lot of positives about Georgia. He decommitted from Alabama. He says Georgia's been on him hard since his freshman year. Great relationship he has there with Del McGee. and the University of Georgia. Loves the fact that Georgia's offensive line is going to be crazy good and crazy young over the next few years. And again, Trey Sanders, nation's #1 running back. Can folks believe that Georgia can do it again? Well, Dell McGee has made Trey Sanders a priority for sure.
Okay, Jeff, what about the nation's #2 running back? That's 4-star Noah Cain. Not the only one from IMG Academy besides Trey Sanders. You got to talk to him as well. Yeah. Is there just too much depth at running back? I mean, the stable is so loaded. Why would the nation's #1 and #2 running backs go to Georgia?
Well, how do you beat the nation's #1 and #3 in 2018? Well, you signed the nation's #1 and #2 in 2019. And I'm not saying it's going to happen, folks, but I'm going to say that the work is being put in for it to happen. Noah Cain basically said there were about 3 or 4 schools that could land both himself and Trey Sanders. Those guys are in the same backfield to get there at IMG Academy. He mentioned Texas. He mentioned Florida State. He mentioned Georgia. And then Miami was another one that was kind of in on both schools, another wish list and everything else like that. Now think about this for a minute now. Georgia, Trey Sanders even told me they know how to utilize 2 backs in the pro style set. They also, both are used to playing together. Their strengths complement one another. Their weaknesses obscure one another, but they also are being coached by one Cadillac Williams. I hope all you guys out there know what Cadillac was all about, running the rock for Auburn. And that is a unique guy to coach those two and talk about the benefits. Everybody remembers back in the days with Big Bad Ronnie Brown, the benefits of the 2-back system in the SEC. Cadillac Williams has lived it, and there is a chance. Noah Cain says there is a chance that Georgia's definitely going to be in the mix for an official visit, and I think that's something to consider there as well. Georgia possibly being in on those 2 backs. And what I said earlier, Hannah, when I was talking about there's a chance Georgia takes 2 backs, Georgia would take John Emery, Trey Sanders, and Noah Cain. Some combination of those 2 for the class of 2019.
James Crump thinks that they're going to miss out on Cain, but we mentioned the puzzle, the pieces of the puzzle. What other running back possibilities could fill in the puzzle?
Well, I think really the name maybe Daniel Carter out of St. Augustine, Florida, out of St. Thomas Aquinas, in South Florida. That's another name to think about as a potential running back target. But if you're asking me right now and you want to try and put me on the spot, I think Georgia will land one of those 3 names for 2019. Now, I'm going to be greedy like my buddy Brandon Adams and say Georgia's going to land 2 of those guys, or the 2 that they want, or anything like that. Because that is just sick what's happening in the recruiting realm with what Georgia's doing with running backs. I know the smart fans thinking here going, okay, Jeff, Elijah Holyfield, DeAndre Smith, Brian Harrion, James Cook, all these guys. Well, you got to think about this. The way Georgia's pitching it is that the NFL doesn't want you used up. You get about 15 to 20 carries a game. Even the prospects tell me, guys, that they use a John Madden reference to all this, and they always want to run the ball around 95, 99% energy. They don't want to be overtired in the 4th quarter on carry number 30, 31 in the SEC, and they like what Georgia's putting in front of them in terms of the offensive line. So it's just kind of what Georgia's going on right now. They're going to rock and roll at the running back spot for years to come.
Guess who just tuned in? Our buddy B.A. Hey, B.A. Just tuning into the show.
What's up, Brandon? Can you give us some good user-viewer interaction like you asked for from your viewers, or is he off right now with his feet on the couch? Or something like that. Come on, Brandon, give us a question, man.
Keeping his set warm.
See what it's like on the other side of the glass.
All right, well, this is not DawgNation Daily. This is Before the Hedges, presented by Kroger. That's Jeff Sintel. I'm Hannah Chalker. And let the celebration begin with custom party platters from Kroger. Order online at Kroger.com or see a deli associate for details. Order must be placed 24 hours in advance, so start planning today for your graduation celebrations. If y'all don't watch DawgNation Daily, our buddy BA is in the comment section right now. That's every morning at 10 a.m. And here we are on Before the Hedges every Monday evening at 7 p.m. with Jeff Sintel, and I'm Hannah Chalker. It's been a good show. We always usually break down the latest news, updated offer lists, and today we had a special scavenger hunt that happened in Athens over the past weekend. If you're just joining us, we just broke down the running backs that were there, and now we're going to talk about the defensive line. So there's 5 top defensive line prospects that UGA has their eyes on, 3 of which were at the scavenger hunt. And we're going to start with 4-star JUCO defensive end prospect Jermaine Johnson, the nation's number 4 overall JUCO prospect. Would he thrive in Athens, and why is UGA after this particular JUCO?
Well, if you watch that highlight film, Hannah, you're going to know pretty good reasons why. He's about 6'6". He's about 245 pounds, out of Independence Community College in Kansas. He took another significant visit to UGA over the weekend. He was part of those scavenger hunters, and I'm going to just drop a cheesy line. I guess scavengers want to play with scavengers, like that savages want to play with savages line from the 2017 class. And Jermaine Johnson, you look at him, you look at his film, big guy, big burst off the edge. Type of guy that you don't see playing multiple seasons at the college level. Might even only be one of those guys that is in and out in 1 year with the right year in the SEC, especially in a big top flight program like the Bulldogs have right now. And Jermaine Johnson is a name. Now we're talking in this segment, I don't want anybody to get crazy like, hey, where's Travon Walker? Well, Travon Walker, we covered him last week. We're scavenger hunting right now in the class of 2019 to find other pieces of the puzzle, kind of like that official visit weekend, unofficial visit weekend, and scavenger hunt weekend. Just trying to put in more names and more pieces of the puzzle for Georgia at the defensive line spot for 2019.
Probably the biggest name of all of the defensive line targets that were at the scavenger hunt, five-star defensive end Zacchaeus Pickens, the nation's #1 strong side defensive end, and the number 13 prospect overall. What's the outlook on Zacchaeus?
Well, Zacchaeus has a very interesting commitment. Now, he's been visiting Georgia a lot. I remember seeing him at camps going back to his freshman and sophomore years. Very interesting things with Zach Pickens. I'm going to get to them pretty quickly. He's a guy that doesn't do a lot of media, so there's not a lot of information out there. He visited Georgia again. He was part of those scavenger hunters as well. His family, his immediate family, his inner circle was there as well. The young man's from TL Hanna in Anderson, South Carolina. Big-time defensive end prospect. Could he slide inside and play on the inside at Georgia? Sure. But he's a five-star, nation's #1 strong side defensive end. Clemson, Georgia, South Carolina seems to be the names you hear the most often with Mr. Pickens.
Okay, Jalen Humphreys, another name in the news this week. He was not at the scavenger hunt, but what is the latest on him?
Yeah, Jalen Humphreys. I always remember this story when Jalen Humphreys was visited by the Georgia and Kirby Smart during the spring. I remember hearing the stories of the coaches from Mountain View High School telling me that Kirby Smart went through their field house saying, "Where's my nose guard? Where's my next nose guard?" Humphreys is a guy that recently released his top 10 schools on Twitter, and there's a lot of big names on there. He's a guy that wants to make his commitment on his senior night, their senior year there at Mountain View. And look, lots of big power programs. You got Nebraska in there, but then you got a heavy SEC flair, Auburn, Tennessee, South Carolina, Florida, those cowbells, Alabama, Georgia, Miami, and LSU. Those are his top 10 schools. Georgia, lots of other schools. Auburn are also prioritizing him heavily. Really good player, 6'4", about 320 pounds in the class of 2019. Could also be a very effective guard at the next level as well. But that's Jalen Humphreys, a name to think about on the DB board for Georgia as they're scavenging hunting and trying to put together all the pieces of the puzzle of their next D-line class.
Another piece, 4-star defensive end Derek Rambo Hunter. You were down in Florida again. You also got a chance to talk to him. What did you hear?
Well, Rambo was cool to talk to, and when you talk to somebody, he's always a great communicator, Hannah. But when you get the chance to actually, check in with him and talk to him face to face, you kind of find more realities when it comes to Derek Hunter. Rambo, as everybody's called, he's not called Rambo by his teammates, but he's really kind of gotten out of the business of naming leaders and naming favorites because he thinks this stuff is very hard. But also, his way of looking at that is he's just a nice kid. He thinks about Southern hospitality. When he goes and visits and hangs out at your house, he's not gonna tell everybody how great the other person's house he visited last week was. He wants to be kind, and the way he can be kind and show appreciation to the offer and the recruiting attention, and that's to be able to just say nice things. And sometimes fans think he falls in love and says glowing things about whatever school he checks out. That's just Derek Hunter being nice. Georgia's in his top 8. He's definitely going to get an official visit from Georgia. Lots of recruits are already telling me they're lining up their official visits in late December, and the game visits are probably going to be Auburn or Georgia Tech for the calendar next season. So Derek Rambo Hunter, good dude to talk to, and he actually plays offensive tackle, defensive end for his home team, and he's one of those kids that got to play with that tackle wheel.
All right, Jeff, obviously, I don't know if you guys are keeping up, but obviously Georgia is going heavy on defensive line in 2019. What about C.J. Clark? He also released his top 5 schools. What do you think about him?
Yes, C.J.'s a guy. You're looking at him. He's out of North Carolina. C.J. Clark has established his top 5 recently, and Georgia's squarely in that. Georgia was also hosted C.J. Clark, one of those selfies you saw right there, and those fine Kirby Smart images with C.J. Clark and his family. Now, he's a defensive tackle. Look at that heavy Carolina flair. South Carolina, North Carolina, NC State. C.J. Clark also doesn't do a lot of media, but sometimes he puts out the fact that Georgia is out in front and is his top school, but barely. He's a guy, a great story I was told by Derek Hunter when he came to visit Georgia recently for G-Day, is Kirby Smart. Nolan Smith came to Kirby Smart and he said, give me 2 guys, give me 5 guys that I should go hunting for Georgia to prioritize and work on during G-Day. Kirby didn't overwhelm him. He said, I got 2 names for you, Derek Hunter and C.J. Clark. And those guys knew everything about Nolan Smith by the end of that visit. And Nolan worked on those 2 guys a lot. And you saw C.J. Clark made it back to Athens for the scavenger hunt as well.
Okay, one more name to add to this defensive line 2019 list that we have just blown through. That's FSU commit Quashon Fuller. Now, what did Quashon do this week that drew attention to his recruitment? Well,
Quashon Fuller, good guy. He's out of Fort Myers, Florida. He's been committed to Florida State for some time, and yet I'm just going to present the information, guys. You can do with it, and you can draw your conjecture or what you will. Committed to Florida State, but recently put out a top 10 list.
Okay.
Interesting way of doing that. Quashon, big-time defensive end, defensive tackle type, very athletic. But he is committed to Florida State, but he also felt the need because he thought it was what's best for his brand and his family. He's putting out a top 10 while he's committed. And I guess it's safe to say that Florida State is probably the number 1 on that top 10 list. But Quashon Fuller, another big guy, actually from the same city, same area as Derek Rambo Hunter, currently committed to Florida State. But he has said in the past he really enjoyed his visit to Georgia, has given a lot of love to Georgia, and he said he will definitely come back and give Georgia another visit. So Quashon Fuller, Florida State commitment, also putting out a top 10. I'd love to hear what folks think about that in the comment section because that's kind of a unique one for me.
Yeah, Georgia low on the list, but they're still on the list.
Yeah, I think hopefully he had Florida State up front because that was an ascending and descending order. But after that, probably doesn't need to be in order. But that's an interesting thing. Now, you don't see that every recruiting cycle.
All the emojis next to him. See, Florida State at the top right there.
That's right. That's right. He's still open to new opportunities, even though he's committed to Florida State. So that is very interesting right there.
Okay, well, we just covered the scavenger hunt from this past weekend at UGA. We talked about running backs and defensive line, the pieces of the puzzle, who was at the scavenger hunt, who wasn't. Our next show, we are going to break down the defensive backs and the linebackers. The puzzle continues to evolve. Andrew Booth was at the scavenger hunt. We mentioned him earlier in the show, the picture with his family. Did you hear anything from Andrew Booth or see anything?
I think the general consensus there is Georgia needed to have a great visit, a great family, warm, hallmark family visit with lots of smiles and giggles and laughs. And I think that happened for Booth and his family over the weekend in Georgia. It's a situation where lots of people look at this and say it's going to be the Tigers or the Tigers for Andrew Booth right now, but he's not making his decision right now. Georgia needed a good visit to kind of get back in the race there with Clemson and Auburn, and I think they had that good visit. It was very interesting how Georgia also made a point to prioritize his sister and the rest of his family along this visit as well, because that's his twin sister. She's a manager on the Archer football team. Those two folks right there are inseparable. They get along well, and a very smart move by Georgia to kind of get in with Andrew Booth and his family to try and play catch up just a smidge with Clemson Tigers and those Auburn Tigers.
Okay, we are going to wrap up our show talking about the Prom Dogs. Such a fun segment that we did last Monday at the end of the show. We showed you some pictures of UGA commits proms. Well, we have an update. So after the show, we had talked about Channing Tindall's lack thereof shoes. You couldn't see the shoes in the picture. He was my winner for best dressed at the prom of the UGA commits. You couldn't see his shoes. So we reached out to Jeff and he sent us a picture, and they're just as great as you would have imagined them to be.
So this is going to be a recount on my part because I said Jamari Salyer was my winner because I wanted to see more from the picture. I wanted to see those shoes. I wanted to see what went with the bow tie, what went with the watch game, what with the Gucci belt, what with the matching. And then you see those shoes, and I mean, you just hear harps playing in the background when you take a look at these shoes right here. You've got him, and I'm going to say this right now: if we're in the business of ranking some shoes, those would be some 6-star shoes right there. I think knowing that shoe game is part of his prom outfit, I've got to give my prom dog vote. I got to change it. I got to give it to Channing Tindall in the class of 2018.
Jeff, you need to up your shoe game.
I don't have shoes like that. I'll admit that. I need to find some shoes like that.
Okay, and one more update for you from the Prom Dawgs. Owen Condon's prom proposal. I don't know how we missed this. How did we miss this, Jeff?
Well, this is really cool because we got an in-depth breaking news report right here because there is a pipeline happening out of Oklahoma City to Athens, Georgia. Everybody knows about Big Owen Condon, the big tall timber out of Oklahoma City. He's going to Georgia. He signed in the class of 2018. But his prom proposal, he asked out a young lady at his same high school in Bishop McGinnis High School in Oklahoma City. And he did it with a little Georgia flavor. But we can't stop the story here. She's actually going to go to Georgia as well.
Aww.
And so you have a little bit of pipeline. And then you dig deeper on this story and you find out that she has not one, but two family members that are also Georgia graduates are on the way to Georgia as well. So somehow in Oklahoma City, there's a whole lot of love for the University of Georgia.
Oh,
and that warms your heart, right? You love
these
prom proposals. It's just that time of year.
It just warms the heart. Congratulations on all of the prom goers and graduates. I'm going to fit in one quick question, and this is relevant. John West asks just Trayvon Walker ? You told me a little something about Trayvon Walker before the show. What did you say about him?
Well, I mean, Trayvon's a guy that's going to make his decision. I think it's funny because he has different answers. He's got a different answer for when he's going to make his decision than his parents do. I'm going to trust the recruit here because sometimes the parents have to pry recruiting information out of their children. Hard to believe, but that's kind of likely the case sometimes. Trayvon's a guy that wants to make his decision sometime before his senior year, maybe the middle of his senior year. And Trayvon Walker, 5-star recruit, wasn't on that scavenger hunt. Everybody always wondering where he's at. Wasn't anywhere last weekend as well, but we can't forget the name Trayvon Walker, and I made sure we dropped it into that scavenger hunt, pieces of the puzzle for Georgia in the class of 2019 for Georgia on the defensive line recruiting, because he would be the keystone of the puzzle for Georgia. The 5-star, the nation's number 2 or 3 defensive tackle, number 3 defensive tackle for 2019, Trayvon Walker. He's a guy out of Upson Lee High School. He says Nolan Smith recruits him endlessly, also recruits him to want to come and join him at IMG Academy as well.
Awesome stuff. We will keep that name going and see what will happen here on Before the Hedges. All right, guys, don't forget you can download us on SoundCloud, wherever you get your podcasts. We are there for you. Take us on the go. Head on over to DawgNation.com as well. Jeff, all of your articles are there. Anything new coming up to update people?
Got Centel's Intel, got some more information from those IMG Academy folks. You can see, expect to see updates about Noah Kane, Legend Cavazos, and also the one and the only Nolan Smith coming up on DawgNation this week. And should be fun. Go to DawgNation.com recruiting and find me on Twitter at Jeff Centel.
Yeah, if there's anything that you want to know more about that we talked about on the show, just go find his articles on DawgNation. All right, that's Jeff Centel. I'm Hannah Chalker. Thank you so much for watching Before the Hedges this evening on DawgNation. Don't forget, we will be off next Monday. No show for Memorial Day. Tell your friends, tell your family. We are not doing a show for Memorial Day, but we will be back the Monday after that. So hope everyone has a safe weekend, safe travels, and a wonderful Memorial Day holiday. We will see you 2 weeks from now. Bye, guys.